Chasing sharks is not for the faint of heart, but for researchers at Jacksonville-based OCEARCH, it's both a passion and a scientific priority. I'm joined now by Chris Fischer, OCEARCH founder and expedition leader. Chris, welcome.
Thanks, Ann. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. So you're about to embark on a month-long ocean voyage. What are you looking for?
Well, you live in a very special place there in Jacksonville where the new OCEARCH global headquarters is currently being built at Jacksonville University. It's the wintering range of our white sharks that live off our east coast that stretch between Newfoundland up in Atlantic Canada and the Gulf of Mexico. And it appears that from the data we're receiving from the sharks that they're likely mating in this region this time of year. So we're actually trying to collect enough data to see if that's the case and to prove that. So that's the particular mission of this expedition. Our data currently indicates from hormone levels we've received from the blood samples from the big males and the big females in early March, we found that they were about 60% to fully ripe and ready to mate in early March off this region. And we're not quite sure if that was they were coming down from mating or if they were working their way up to mating. So we weren't sure if it was before March or after March. And so this is an April 1st trip with a real hope to see some mature animals and get some blood samples from both mature males and females as well as semen samples from the males so we can make sure if they're viable. That's the real goal, is to, for the first time in history, identify the mating site of one of the 9 populations of white sharks around the world.
So this is voyage 47 for you, I believe, this expedition northbound?
This will be the 47th expedition I've led around the world, and the team has performed.
And you, before getting into shark research, you had a really successful TV show on ESPN called Offshore Adventures. Then you kind of pivoted to ocean conservation. Explain how it is that you got into, trying to research sharks in particular.
Well, when we were making Offshore Adventures back from the late 90s up till about 2009, we were moving primarily across the Pacific, and, we were young. Captain Brett, who's been with me on the water now, Brett McBride, he's the most gifted waterman I've ever been around. Since the late 90s, we've been on the water together, and we're about the same age. And so we were doing Offshore Adventures, and it was great. We were pouring the world's oceans into people's lives. The noble goal when I began was to pour the world's oceans into people's lives at a scale unseen since Cousteau. That was the goal. I felt like since when he had passed that there was a void. And so I began Offshore Adventures in an effort to do that. While I was doing it, we started to see that, the scientists were tasked with basically an impossible job. They go to school, they learn about their area of discipline and science, and then they're just kind of let loose out in the world, and they're supposed to be able to go collect the data to publish the papers we need to manage sport abundance and make sure our kids see a robust future in the ocean. But no one really teaches them how to run a boat, how to catch whatever they're studying, how to collect the data. So there was this gap we saw with scientists struggling to collect data. Meanwhile, we were out on the ocean catching and releasing the things they wanted to study to make TV shows. And it just didn't make any sense to me. And I started to dig into it, and there was a disconnect between the fishermen and the scientists, the lack of trust. Everybody had lost sight of our grandchildren in the discussion and the ocean in the discussion. And so I began to try to build a common vision that was based around an ocean first, great-grandchildren first disposition. And I went to Brett and I said, hey, Brett, these guys need help. Oftentimes, many people in the space will say they believe that the full-time watermen on the ocean are about 30 years ahead of the science and understanding what's going on out there. And so I was like, we got to help close this gap, because he and I were just starting to have families. We were just starting to have kids. And the fishing had changed for us, the experience on the water. And I was like, man, we got to do more. And so we started helping the people who studied the stuff we were catching on the show. So if you saw us down in Central America catching billfish and things like that, at the time, we weren't smart enough to put the science forward. But after we would do what we were doing to make the show, we would have the scientists come in and tag animals, and we radically accelerated the rate at which they could collect data in an environment where the science community is saying the biggest challenge for the future of the ocean is data deficit, right? So we had overcome the capacity to collect data by just bringing the world-class skills of professional watermen together with scientists on a common vision that was great-grandchildren in ocean first, and forget about who's the scientist, forget about who's the fisherman, let's just get this done.
I love
And
your.
so,
Oh, go ahead.
well, and so when we started to help those people, the science community actually came to us and said, it's great you're helping us with these pelagic fish, these billfish and other species, but if we don't fix our large shark problem, there will be no billfish, there will be no tuna. And I was like, so you mean this lifestyle that we love so much, which is basically getting families out on the water to love it and enjoy it, won't exist if we don't fix this large shark problem? And they came to me and they said, yeah, and there's no data on these large sharks. They're too big. We can't catch them. We can't leverage the latest technology to figure out where they're mating and birthing and the nurseries are. And we're down to 9% of our large sharks. And we're seeing the ecosystems begin to collapse. And when I asked, I said, well, who's working on the sharks? They just said there's no one who has the capacity to handle these big animals. And I literally, I mean, so I like to simplify things. And I looked at him and I said, are you trying to tell me that if we don't fix this large shark problem, my great-grandchildren and everyone else's won't be able to go out and catch a fish and eat a fresh fish sandwich? And they looked at me and they said, yes. And when I looked around the space, I didn't really see anyone else with the opportunity to pivot. We were really good at catching big things and letting them go alive. And so we pivoted. We pivoted from the shiny white boat, the yacht, and the gourmet galley, to a big metal ship and research and exploration and science to enable these scientists to collect data much, much faster and on things they can't collect data from, so that we could manage toward abundance, really in an effort to make sure our grandkids can see an operating ocean. Because if the ocean's not operating, we're dead on land, right? It's all our water. It's 2/3 of our air. And that's why. I mean, I'm not a shark guy. I'm an abundance guy. And it's just the path to abundance goes through the apex predator, and that's where we're making a historic difference right now.
We have just about a minute left, but if you can tell us, you've really transformed how the public accesses and interacts with data. How has that been central to the work that you're doing?
Well, that was totally disruptive when we began. People were very upset at us with the science community back in 2012 and 13 when we began to open source the data, because that was another problem with the structure of how we do ocean research. It was all being hidden. People were trying to hide their data and leverage it to get ahead of one another. And in the end, it's going to take us all. So because we were funding the work, we were able to disrupt these old norms and open source the data and include the public in the most charismatic research project in the ocean in the world right now. I mean, we're solving the life history puzzle of our great white shark populations. And that was transformational. It allowed the public into the science space. It was no longer about the ivory tower. They began to care. They began to get involved and understand. And it really changed the conversation around sharks. Because we knew we had to not only solve the puzzle, they had an image problem, right? We had to help people understand how important their role was and why they're so important. And that was a big part of open sourcing the data, and also open sourcing, communicating with the sharks about the sharks, and speaking to people how all of us who aren't in the academic space speak. So it's been hugely important, because in the end, it's going to take us all.
Well, Chris Fischer, we know that the OCEARCH facility is due to start getting underway in Mayport soon. We appreciate your work and joining us today, and we'll look forward to hearing about when you come back from Voyage 47.
Yeah, thank you. We are so excited about the new Global World Headquarters down in Mayport. The people that came together to make that happen was really unbelievable. It was actually Mayport's idea to bring OCEARCH there. Bill Gullerford from the city council brought us down there. And then Duggan and Yarborough over in Tallahassee, they really battled for the economic development of the
Chris,
region, and we're grateful and thrilled.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much. We appreciate it.